Hello and welcome to the Sidebar, presented by True Crime News, taking you inside the courtrooms of high-profile and notorious cases from across the country. I'm your host, Joshua Ritter. I'm a criminal defense lawyer based in Los Angeles and previously an LA County prosecutor for nearly a decade. We are recording this on Wednesday, October 15th, 2025. In this week's episode, a woman's sanity is at the center of a jury deliberations as she faces trial for the fatal stabbing of a 3-year-old. Plus, defense attorneys seek to dismiss federal charges against Luigi Mangione, including the only count that could carry the death penalty. But first, a long-anticipated independent medical examiner evaluation rules that a woman's 20 stab wounds were not the result of a homicide. Our guest this week is Franz Borghardt, an attorney and legal analyst you can catch on Court TV and many other media outlets. Franz, welcome back, my friend. How are you?
Josh, always a pleasure to be on the show. Shout out to you and all your followers. Great show. Heavy lifting here, man. Heavy lifting on true crime, so I love it.
Well, we always appreciate speaking with you. I know how closely you follow a lot of these cases, and I always appreciate your take because you're a working criminal defense attorney, and so you've got boots on the ground insights into a lot of these things. So let's jump in first. Out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, a woman's controversial death will not be investigated as a homicide despite suffering over 20 stab wounds, including injuries to the back. Ellen Greenberg was found dead in her apartment by her fiance, Sam Goldberg, in 2011. An autopsy report showed that the woman had been stabbed in the neck, back, head, and heart and suffered bruises all over her body in various states of healing. Despite the bizarre circumstances, a medical examiner at the time ruled that the death was self-inflicted, shocking the Greenberg family as well as the true crime community, eventually gaining over 160,000 signatures asking the city to reopen the case. In the 14 years since Greenberg's death, lawsuits leveled by the family against the medical examiner's office and the city of Philadelphia have been settled for undisclosed monetary payouts and agreements to reevaluate the manner of death. The initial coroner has even signed a written statement agreeing they no longer believe that Greenberg's death was self-inflicted. Finally, this month, a new medical examination was released. In a 32-page report, the medical examiner concluded, quote, while the distribution of injuries is admittedly unusual, the fact remains that Ellen would be capable of inflicting these injuries herself, citing that Greenberg was a young woman suffering from anxiety. While the city of Philadelphia and the medical examiner have not yet responded to media inquiries for comment, you can bet this will not be the last time we hear from the Greenbergs about her death. Franz, this is a case, like I said, 11 years we've been talking about this thing. 11 years the family has been fighting for this. This has got to be devastating to them. What are your thoughts on this? Are you shocked? I mean, I know you're not a medical examiner, but I'm just asking you for your response as somebody who's been following this case.
So I will admit, Josh, I drank a lot of the Kool-Aid on this one. There's no way. I mean, looking at the wounds, there's no way she committed suicide. There's no way she committed this act on herself. But, behind the head, if you look at the stab wounds, there's all different angles. And then, of course, on top of that, separate and apart from the medical examination, you have the partner come in. And if you listen to the 911, it is the worst performance by someone who loves someone else you've ever heard. So I was drinking the Kool-Aid. I was like, oh, no, this isn't a suicide. Second evaluation comes back. I think it was 30 plus pages. And yeah, I'm frankly at a loss. I didn't think that this is going to be how it comes down. And look, he concluded that even one of the wounds actually may have been from examiner number one, who inadvertently may have punctured the back of the head. So, I mean, the problem is for the family is even if you had a third evaluation, the water is so muddy at this point.
Right.
Like to have, as a defense attorney, to have a case where I have one examiner say suicide, that's enough for me to argue reasonable doubt. Now there's two. I have to imagine this is it for this case. I mean, I can't imagine they're going to keep plowing forward in the criminal.
Were you a prosecutor before? I can't remember.
I've done all sides of the table. I've been a public defender.
You've
I was
done your time on that side.
so I was a felony prosecutor in the city of Baton Rouge. So
Yeah.
I had some cases like this. I had murder suicide cases.
Yeah.
So weird stuff.
I'm curious. What are your thoughts? I'm not shocked that it didn't come back homicide. I'm more shocked that it didn't come back undetermined. It seems to me like that might have been a safe kind of middle ground, given everything you just pointed out about the injuries, but then given, other circumstances that they may have been aware of that leaned towards it being self-harm. Why not go with this? And I listen, I'm not inviting medical examiners to just split the baby, but it seems like undetermined might have been a safe, a reasonable evaluation of this case. Is there, from a prosecutor's perspective, is there harm in doing that? Does that cause further complications? Why do you think there's some sort of pressure at play here?
Well, one, I don't know that this examiner can definitively say it was a suicide. It could have been a suicide. And if we're using language like it could have been a suicide, why are we not using language like undeterminable?
Right.
And because by doubling down on the suicide piece, you've tied the hands of the prosecution to where they can't do anything with this. At that exam, I thought for sure the examiner was going to punt and say inconclusive.
Yeah.
Like could be, might be something else. And that would have been the safe answer. That would have also given the victim's family just enough breathing room to be like, you know what? Now, what's also included, what was interesting to me when I was reviewing it, what was also included in the examination was mental health components.
Mm-hmm.
The examiner didn't just examine the body, but also did a medical history of some of the mental health issues of the deceased. I'm going to say deceased. So I was frankly surprised that they committed that much. The safer, politically sound answer would have been inconclusive, undeterminable. And look, if a prosecutor wants to move forward with that, they go to the grand jury, and the grand jury, Josh, you either get the indictment because you want the indictment, or you let them decide, and they decide whether or not they want to get the indictment or not.
Yeah. Well, the ultimate question now is they've had their civil lawsuit. They settled that. The only thing that was required was that this examination take place. They obviously cannot, litigate what the results would be, only that there would be an evaluation done. That has been done. The city of Philadelphia now has, two medical examiners coming to the same conclusion, as you said, of this being self-harm. Are we at the end of the road for the Greenbergs? I mean, what more? You make the excellent point. Even if they could do something more, the waters are so muddied. But are they kind of at the end of their rope anyways, as far as what options they might have in this case? Because my conclusion is kind of like yours. Even if there was another opinion, the police aren't going to do anything about it. They're on such solid footing, I feel, at this point, to do nothing as far as investigate this as a homicide.
You would have to have a straight-faced confession by an individual that had the opportunity, the means, and I don't think he's going to do that. So I think they're in the clear in so much as I don't see how you move forward with a prosecutor. I mean, if you're a prosecutor on this case, you got to look at that family and say, look, there's a reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
Like, I know you believe what you believe. Now, that all being said, it's the true crime world of 2025. And how many times have we seen cases that seemingly had dead ends all of a sudden, based on some good podcasting sleuth work, have some kind of lead? I mean, I don't want to say the door is completely closed. The door's not locked, but it's definitely closed. Yeah. And so I just don't see, it would be problematic. It would be very problematic for them to institute prosecution at this point with the second evaluate. I mean, again, had he come back with anything other than what he came back with, maybe, but I just don't see them moving forward with anything.
Yeah, I think you're right. My heart goes out to that family because they have poured their heart and soul into this over the past 10 plus years, not to mention, I think, every dime that they had to their name. It's really unfortunate that they basically end up exactly where they left off. And it's sad because I know having spoken to people close to them, that all they were really looking for was somebody to even say it wasn't suicide. It was indeterminate. It was like they just wanted that out there, not even so much that they wanted somebody arrested, but it doesn't look like they'll even get that.
Apathy is a snowball.
Yeah.
That the more it rolls, the more it gets bigger. And if you believe that there is apathy, not wrongdoing, not well, maybe a little incompetence, but if you believe like there just is a person or set of people who just don't care, there's no opportunity for closure in that.
That is such an excellent point. We don't even have to get to the point of a cover up and a conspiracy. We just have to get to the point of laziness. And that might be their biggest obstacle at this point. I mean, and listen, not to throw that entire police department under the bus, but who's going to go out on a limb at this point? I mean, you've got two evaluations saying suicide. You'd really have to be a loose cannon kind of detective to say, I don't believe any of that. I'm going ahead and trying to solve this case myself. So anyhow.
Well, the flip side is, at what point do you start eroding qualified immunity? If you start doing things that are so far out there, then there's civil exposure to anybody they try to arrest at that point. So,
excellent point. Yeah, so sad. So many things at play here. Well, we will leave it there for now. We'll see if there's any developments. We will obviously keep you all informed.
One of the things I've realized is that home security isn't just about protecting things. It is about protecting people. For me, it's my family, pets, even my car that I want to feel safe. That's why I'm so excited to partner with Simply Safe. I love how customizable Simply Safe is. I've got cameras and entry sensors on the doors and windows, but there's also water sensors and smoke and CO2 detectors in the kitchen. And with the app, I can arm or disarm the system, check camera feeds, and manage every feature from anywhere. Seriously. Full control right from my phone. And the best part, no long-term contracts. Monitoring plans start at about $1 a day, and it's easy to install. There's also a professional installation option if you prefer that. Plus, Simply Safe has been recognized by U.S. News, Newsweek, and USA Today for top customer service and being the best home security system. I also added Active Guard outdoor protection. Unlike old school alarms that only go off after a break-in, Active Guard can stop crime before it happens. AI-powered cameras alert monitoring agents to suspicious activity, trigger alarms, spotlights, and even request police dispatch if needed, all while ignoring familiar faces like neighbors or your dog walker. And because I want you to have the same peace of mind I do, save 50% on your Simply Safe security system when you sign up for a professional monitoring plan and get your first month free. Visit simplysafe.com/truecrime to customize yours. There's no safe like Simply Safe.
Let's move to Cleveland, Ohio, where the sanity of a woman charged with stabbing a 3-year-old child to death will soon rest in the hands of a jury as the murder trial draws to a close. Bionca Ellis stands accused of the fatal stabbing of 3-year-old Julian Wood, who was attacked outside of a grocery store as he was pushed in a cart by his mother. Ellis has undergone multiple efforts to restore her competency before even facing trial and has pled not guilty by reason of insanity. The defense acknowledges that Ellis is responsible for the child's killing, including a stab through the cheek that lacerated his tongue and a wound through his back that lacerated his lung. They contend, however, that Ellis' severe mental illness prevented the woman from understanding the difference between right and wrong. In a last-minute motion to dismiss the charges in court, they were unsuccessful in discarding the murder charge, but the judge did grant an acquittal on the charge of tampering with evidence, which could be a strong indication of the proceedings leaning in Ellis's favor. However, after Ellis's defense rested their case, the state presented rebuttal evidence from a psychologist who conducted an interview with Ellis, concluding that the woman suffered from schizophrenia, but it did not prevent her from knowing right from wrong in the deadly ordeal. It will now be up to jurors to decide Ellis's fate, and we will continue to keep you updated. And it is my understanding that as we're recording this, there is a verdict, but it has not been announced in court yet. So we will probably have those results by the time we release this episode. But Franz, talk to us a little bit about criminal insanity so that we all kind of understand the playing field here. When we're talking about criminal insanity, what really is the question at play?
It is, as you articulated, is the individual able to distinguish between right and wrong such that they understood what they were doing? And it is as clear cut as that, which of course is not a very clear cut thing. The mere presence of a mental health diagnosis is not enough. You've got to not be able to distinguish between right and wrong. And what's interesting in this case, Josh, is you have a woman, and all during the trial, I don't think anybody would assert that she was malingering.
Right.
Faking. I think she clearly has a history of mental health. She clearly has some issues. There was skepticism in the trial of whether or not she understood enough to know that by doing this, she would end up in jail, which would give her essentially a roof over her head and sustenance. Now, that may sound very silly to individuals like us who are like, wait, you'd rather be in jail than free. You'd rather... That is not unable to distinguish between right and wrong. That may just be monumentally bad decision making. So, coupled with the fact that we have what appears on its face to be a random, senseless crime,
right?
I don't, look, the DA's office, in this case, the DA's office had some issues with a specific intent conviction. Now, as we're talking, the verdict is coming down right now, so who knows what they're going to rule on. And I've tried not to spoil the surprise for anybody because I've tried not to go and look off to the side while we're talking about it. But I, there's a strong part of me that thinks maybe, if not guilty by reason of insanity, some kind of lesser charge, like a manslaughter. Now, to be sure, if she gets convicted of the top charge, not guilty by reason of insanity, she doesn't just walk out the back door of the court. She'll be institutionalized probably much of the rest of her life.
Right, correct. Just so people oftentimes are under the misnomer that means the person walks out the door. That is not the case. But they don't walk into prison, and that's a big deal as well. This case is fascinating to me, as many of these NGI cases are. Many of them I feel are not a close call. And a lot of times it's just a Hail Mary long shot on the part of the defense. In this case, though, you do, like you said, no one is really arguing she's malingering as to her mental problems. But to your point as well, that does not necessarily per se mean she could not have appreciated what she was doing. Some interesting things to me were, one, the planning. And you might say, well, what planning? Well, there is planning. When you steal a knife, you intend to do something with that knife. Now, it may not be the most, we're not talking about sitting down with diagrams and charts, but you're planning to do something with that knife. She attacks a vulnerable person, a 3-year-old in a cart along with a mother. She didn't attack some 6'2", 250-pound man. She attacked somebody vulnerable. All of those things to me, including some of her conduct afterwards, some of the things, what may have motivated her anger to begin with about having been released from jail, but felt like she didn't get all her property back. All of these things, to me, show someone that obviously suffering from problems, but does not live in a world where she could not appreciate what she was doing was wrong. All of that being said, I want to add in the one more factor here that we're not really talking about because it shouldn't be considered by the jury, but that is, you heard the testimony of a mother who talked about the final moments of her 3-year-old baby boy being stabbed to death in front of her. I just feel like jurors are going to have a hard time hearing the law and the standards and everything else, realizing what the pain is involved in this case. What are your thoughts?
I think anytime you have the murdering of an innocent human being that is a child, there is an emotional toll that makes it very difficult to separate the nature of who the victim is from the act. And I think you're absolutely spot on. I think it's going to be very hard to say, because the belief is going to be by these jurors, even if they're instructed otherwise by the judge, the belief is going to be, if we find her not guilty by reason of insanity, we're letting her off.
Yeah. Yes.
Even if the judge says, hey, that's not your role, even if the judge says, no, she's going to be institutionalized in a forensic facility. No. They're going to think we're letting her get away with essentially the worst kind of murder. So my suspicion is you are correct. I think that this one's tough for me because I think this probably in some places of the world, this would have been a plea to some kind of life sentence. And that would have been that. She loses, by the way, she loses nothing raising the issue of not guilty by reason of insanity. It's just, and I don't think she's facing the death penalty on this. So
no.
Yeah. So, I mean, to some degree, I get it. I understand it. And as a defense attorney, I mean, it's a straight-faced argument for not guilty by reason of insanity. The issue is absolutely what you said, which is it's going to be really hard. I mean, pictures of that child, adorably cute, sweet. The mama testified. I mean, it's tough.
Yeah. I mean, you and I both know this from having done many trials that I don't care how many times you instruct jurors, there are some things they just can't get out of their head. And I think one of those is the idea of what's going to happen to this person. If I find them guilty, not guilty by insanity, what's going to happen to this person? And if they feel that person's not going to be locked up forever, they're probably going to do what they feel they need to do to make sure that does happen.
Right.
But we shall see. Like I said, we're speaking in a little bit of a time warp here because they have a verdict, and we will find out probably by the time we conclude recording this. Let's move to our final case out of Manhattan, New York, where lawyers for Luigi Mangione are seeking a dismissal of some of the defendant's federal charges, including the only count that could carry the death penalty. Mangione, who stands accused of the fatal shooting of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, scored a major win in state court last month when a judge dismissed terrorism charges facing Mangione, ruling that they didn't meet the legal standard required. Now his defense is once again arguing that prosecutors have stretched the federal statutes in order to dramatize the tragic killing. Not only are they seeking a dismissal of the only charge that could carry the death penalty, they want to bar statements Mangione made to law enforcement officers from trial, claiming that the defendant was not Mirandized before questioning. And Mangione's defense also argued that his backpack was searched without a warrant, meaning that the alleged evidence of a gun and ammunition should also be dismissed under protections against unlawful searches. A federal judge is set to hear oral arguments on the matters on December 5th, and we will be following this case closely. This is another interesting one, Franz. The federal stalking in this case is based upon the idea that he moved across state lines to go to the location where he knew Thompson would be so that he could execute this man. Is that a stretch? What do you think? Is that stalking just because you go from one state to another where you know that person is going to be? What are your thoughts on this?
So I'm going to preface my answer with, as someone who has defended death penalty cases and as someone who has had to make decisions on whether or not to charge death penalty in cases, anytime you're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole in a capital case, that's a problem.
Yeah,
that's a big problem because typically prosecutors want it to be something that just makes sense. The aggravating circumstances, whatever the predicates are under the state law or the federal law, they just want it to make sense to where really the jury isn't bent over, well, should we or shouldn't we? That said, in the federal statute, I think that there's a good argument for, that kind of looks and smells like stalking. The terrorist, the national terror, the domestic terrorism kind of argument, I always thought that was problematic in the state case. Now, there's certainly an argument for it. I mean, I'm not saying that that's not a straight-faced argument. What I'm saying is the stalking, at least as it relates to the federal sovereignty, is a much better argument than the domestic terrorism one. Now, that said, if they lose that, you've got two different sovereignties seeking life in prison.
Yeah. Listen, the win on the state side of things, I think, is a huge win. This is a person, he was looking at life, and now he's looking at, as little as 15 years. I know the judge could sentence him to more, and it still is a quote unquote life sentence, but he's looking at now a minimum of 15 years on that case, and he's a young man. A huge win for them, and we haven't even gotten to trial. So you're right. If they manage to make any headway with this one, it's really going to look problematic for the prosecution on both sides. Let's get into these other arguments they're making here, and not even specific to this case. Well, maybe a little bit specific to it, but I want you to help listeners to understand these issues here. But first of all, he is stopped at a McDonald's in Pennsylvania. Someone identifies him, feels that, hey, that might be the guy that everybody's looking for. Officers come in and they start to talk to him. And the argument is that when they start talking to him and getting certain admissions out of him, not that he's the one who did it, but where has he been? Where is he coming from? Things like that, that they don't Mirandize him. How does Miranda work in this context? Are they going to have problems with those statements? What are we looking at here from a legal perspective?
So generally, under most state laws and under the federal law, Miranda is required when you have what's called a custodial interrogation. So he's in custody. He doesn't have to be in handcuffs. He just can't be free to leave. That's right. Generally, that's not free to leave. And he has to be being interrogated. Now, interrogating might be asking questions, might be, but if he's spontaneously just uttering things, if he's just answering things, if he's just admitting things, now, bigger picture is, why wouldn't you Mirandize him? Bigger picture is whether or not he was in custody or not in custody, whether or not it was an interrogation or not, why wouldn't you just Mirandize him? And look, just because they claim he wasn't Mirandized doesn't mean he wasn't Mirandized. That's part of the government's going to have to show, one, whether or not he was or wasn't. And if he wasn't, this is why it was okay for us not to Mirandize him. He wasn't under arrest. He wasn't under custody. Look, if he would have wanted to go get another Big Mac, he could have gone and ordered one and that would have been okay. He could have shut it off at any moment. All these things are going to come forward. Now, my question becomes, was there body camera video footage of all this? Because if there is, that is going to be very germane to the analysis of, hey, is this a good interrogation?
Yeah. My initial, you're right. The body cam will be very enlightening, but my initial kind of gut reaction is hard to make an argument for custody when you're sitting in a McDonald's, but you're also surrounded by a bunch of officers with badges and guns. I don't know if you entirely feel free to go at that point, but we'll see. These arguments will all get fleshed out on December 5th. Last question on this is the warrant issue. So he's also in that same encounter. He's got a backpack with him, and the officers, and again, we'll have to see because the sequence of events is so crucial here, but at one point, they do seize and search that backpack, and they find in it the gun that was the 3D printed gun that they had been looking for, a bunch of other very, very crucial evidence to the prosecution. They don't have a warrant, though. How does this work? How does this play out? What analysis will the court be conducting?
So, and this is an oversimplification. If you have a warrantless search of a backpack, on the top of my head, there's two exceptions to a warrantless search that allows you to be able to go inside. One, did he give consent? Did he say, yeah, you can look at my bag? That's number one. If he gives consent.
And it's surprising how often people do give consent, too.
Right. So if he gives consent, you don't need a warrant.
Right.
Are they going to say exigent circumstances? Are they going to say that in some way, shape, or form that there could have been a weapon in the bag and that created it? So they get the right to pat him down. I don't know that they get the right to go into the bag under exigent circumstances. And again, it's a double-edged sword. If he's not detained, if he's not under custody, maybe he has access to the bag. I don't know. It's going to be very fact. Bottom line is it's a totality of the circumstances, very fact specific. But you know what? I wouldn't be shocked. And going back to what you kind of humorously said, I wouldn't be shocked if he just said, hey, y'all can look inside of it.
Yeah.
Or the way it normally happens. You mind if I look in your bag? Sure. Go ahead. That's how it normally.
I can't even tell you the amount of times that I've had a client who says, yeah, and then they started searching through my stuff, and you go back through the report and it says they gave consent. And then you think, please tell me this is just a poorly written report or a not accurate report. And then you look at the badge cam or something, and it's about that simple. Mind if we take a look? Yeah, sure. But blah, blah, blah. And they're so preoccupied with other things, or they're so intimidated by the idea that they're talking to officers, that people just don't usually say, no, I don't give you permission. Mind if we take a look around your car? Sure.
So what I want to know is, where was the bag? Was the bag in the car? Right. If the bag's in the car, where's the bag in the car? You're familiar with this case, but we call it an Arizona v. Gantt wingspan search. Yeah. But that, I don't know that works here. If it's in a zipped up bag, is it in the trunk? Is not. If it's on his person, then I think the police may have issues. However, I think you're spot on. This is a guy that didn't shy away from the fact of what he was accused of doing. So my suspicion is he may have even told them, yeah, you can go and look at my bag, and what you're going to find in it is X, Y, and Z. So
we'll see.
Don't know.
Also, just one more thing to throw in here. You mentioned exigent circumstances just kind of as a throwaway, but remember, he's considered armed and dangerous when they're looking for him, and they encounter this person who's giving them, I think he initially gives them a bad ID or whatever it is. They may be thinking officer safety when it comes to that bag too.
So a third exception might be, and again, it's fact specific. Was he under arrest at that point, and was this a search
incident?
Was this a search incident to arrest where they're doing what they call an inventory search?
Right.
I don't know. These are the three that jump out to me, and maybe there's another one, but those are the three that jump out. But long story made short, I think you're spot on. I think this is a kid, this is a guy, young man, whatever we want to call him, an individual that's at least a suspect who may be armed and dangerous, who has just shot somebody maybe in broad daylight, and literally broad daylight on the street. So I think exigent circ, this is the kind of case that's going to make new case law.
Yeah. Because
especially if the death penalty is on the table, it's going to go all the way up.
Yeah. Very good point. We could be citing Mangione one day in court. This was such a pleasure. That is our show for this week. As always, we'd like to give a special thanks to our listeners and viewers for tuning in. But in the meantime, Franz, where can people find out more about you?
Easiest way to find me is Borghardt Law, at Borghardt Law on Twitter, on X. Borghardt. It's actually on this little Zoom thing over here. So if you do that, that's the best way of finding me, and you can stalk me from there. Oh, stalking, wrong word. Right.
Just don't cross state lines while you do it.
Just don't cross state lines.
I'm your host, Josh Ritter. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Joshua Ritter ESQ. And if you want to hear my thoughts and coverage on even more true crime cases, please check out my YouTube channel, Courtroom Confidential. And you can, of course, find all of our Sidebar episodes wherever you get your podcasts. And we would love to hear from you. If you've got questions or comments you'd like us to address, please tweet us your questions with the hashtag TCN Sidebar. And thank you for joining us at the True Crime News Sidebar.